Thank you, Mr. President. Well, today is almost a year in the job, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to do something that's quite rare in politics, and that's reflect on my first year in the Senate. It's a great day to be able to do that, to do it on the same day that my fellow colleague, Senator Peter Whish-Wilson, gave his first speech to the Parliament, which is a special moment and feels like it was only a few weeks ago for myself. I went back and had a look at my first speech and tried to look at what were some of the things that I identified as important for me personally to pursue in this place, and how much progress have I made in a year in this place. Well, I have to say it was a great privilege to be here to see the passage of the climate change legislation. One of the things that was very clear for me was to come into this place and to try and get some action on climate change, and we saw that earlier this year with the passage of the climate change legislation, a huge privilege. Of course, health and multiculturalism, two of my other areas of interest, and I'll talk a little bit about both of those, and particularly the issue of multiculturalism, given where we are at the moment and the very sad time with the deaths of people seeking refuge in this country. So on the area of dental health, something that the Greens made part of their agreement with the Labor Party in government, we were fortunate enough to get a National Dental Advisory Council established, and I think it's important to pay tribute to the many people involved in that council. One of the things I've realised is that there are a number of people outside of politics who contribute their time, often unpaid, to improve the health and well-being of this nation, and I think that often goes unacknowledged, and I think now's an opportunity to acknowledge their hard work. As a result of that advisory council, we got a blueprint about what should happen in the area of dental health, and dental health is one of the great reform challenges that still face this nation. It's right up there with the disability insurance scheme, and one of the greatest reforms since Medicare, should we manage to achieve it. Through the negotiations on the private health insurance rebate, we were fortunate enough to get a $150 million commitment to dental care. The changes to the private health insurance legislation were welcome in our view, and I think one of the things that we need to do in this nation is to ensure that we protect and enshrine universal coverage when it comes to health in this nation. Through the budget, we were fortunate enough to get a $1 billion investment in a $500 million investment in dental care, which will mean that low-income Australians can access dental care for the very first time, and many for the very first time, and we'll be able to make a significant impact on dental waiting lists. So we've achieved some significant gains in this space. I have to say it has been an honour to be able to advance this issue, something I feel very strongly about, something that in a wealthy nation like Australia needs urgent attention. We also advocated for a number of dentists who were caught up in the audits of the chronic disease scheme, and it's one of those small issues that many people won't know much about, but to have the opportunity to try and remedy a significant injustice on people has been, again, something that I've been very, very lucky to be able to do. Very early on in my term, I was involved with my first Senate committee hearing, which was into the deferral of listings of PBS medication, and it gave me some insight into the work that the Senate committee system does right around the country in a number of areas. And the Senate committee system is something that's very precious, something that is unique to this place, and is something that needs to be protected because the committee system does such tremendous work. I was involved in two significant campaigns. I think it's important to give the government credit for its initiatives on plain packaging, something that's led the world. The plain packaging reforms gave me the opportunity through the Senate committee process to spar with tobacco lobbyists, and I have to say it's one of the memories I have in the first year of the job, to have the opportunity to look some tobacco executives in the eye and to essentially take them to task on what was a very, very necessary public health reform. In the area of alcohol, worked very hard on trying to get some movement in the area of pricing and improving alcohol labelling, things which are really important public health interventions, and we're working very, very hard to try and get some movement in that space. And of course, I was lucky enough to introduce my first bill, a bill that would essentially ban the Australian government from investments in the tobacco industry through the Future Fund. Now, we think that it's really important that if the government's to continue doing the good work it's done on tobacco control, then it needs to take the next step and ensure that it doesn't invest at the moment in the order of $200 million in companies like Philip Morris and British American Tobacco. So it's been an interesting learning curve in terms of developing that bill and hopefully watching its passage through this place. And who knows, we may even see some major reform in that area. In health, we've pursued a transparency agenda where we've tried to make some changes to the way that the pharmaceutical industry interacts with the medical profession. It's really important in 21st century Australia that individuals have the opportunity or have the confidence to know that the relationship that they have with their health professional hasn't been compromised through inducements and offers of flights overseas in the guise of education. We've also wanted to see that transparency agenda extend to the area of community pharmacy, who do some terrific work, but we do need to get more transparency around the pharmacy agreement, an agreement worth $15 billion to the taxpayer. In the area of gambling reform, another one of my portfolio areas, we've seen the best and worst of minority government. We saw a group of independent voices come to the parliament with a strong desire to want to reform poker machines. We've seen some movement, but nowhere near enough. And one of the things I have had, again, the honour to be able to do is to be able to change the debate a little in this area by ensuring that the issue of $1 bets is firmly on the national agenda. But one of the great things that you have in this job is the opportunity to give voice to issues that may not necessarily dominate the national political landscape. On the issue of West Papua, it is a great privilege for me to be able to stand here and give voice to that issue. On Thursday, I hope, or tomorrow, I hope to be able to found a parliamentary group that will bring together like-minded people on this issue and begin to seek justice for the people of West Papua. And you know, when you're getting visited regularly by the Indonesian embassy, you are making some inroads on an issue. Likewise, the issue of drug law reform. Today, to be able to announce a non-partisan group of politicians who want to seek to advance the issue of drug law reform, again, is one of the great joys of this job, to be able to advance issues that may not necessarily be politically popular, but where we know there are politicians in this place that are keen to advance, to work with them and to cooperate with them. And one of the things that the community don't see in this parliament is the amount of cooperation that does exist behind the scenes. Often the curtain gets drawn in question time. We assume our roles. People shout across the chamber, but what people don't see is the amount of cooperation and goodwill that does exist across party lines. So in closing, I have to say it has been a great learning curve. It's been a great privilege to be here, to be able to negotiate with government on some important reforms, on climate change, on the area of dental health, areas that I'm very keen to see some progress in. It does highlight the importance of a power-sharing arrangement where different voices exist in the parliament and can bring different perspectives on issues that are often perspectives that belong to many people within the community. And I'll finish by saying it is with some sadness that I give this speech, because I believe that multiculturalism is one of the things that makes this country a great place. And today we're having a debate on the issue of refugees and asylum seekers. I know that there's no straightforward answer to this solution. It's a gravely difficult dilemma. I'm pleased to see that there may be some progress made on the issue, that there is now agreement that we need to work with our neighbours in Malaysia and in Indonesia to ensure that we've got legal safeguards for people, that people are safe while they're being processed, that we need a regional solution, that we need to increase our humanitarian intake. But I believe it's also important to acknowledge that despite our best efforts, regardless of the policy settings we have in place, some people will continue to take risks, and Australia has a duty and an obligation to offer them protection.